I'm Don.
Awesome. Thanks for joining me again this week, Don. How's your week been going?
Yeah, it's been an interesting week. Mostly excited about getting F1 underway, so we're on the real countdown now. Uh, also, Drive to Survive came out this week, so I haven't started it yet, but I'm planning on binging it over the next couple days. But yeah, I'm up here in Salt Lake City area in Utah, and planning on hitting the slopes. We got a good snowstorm in the mountains over the last little bit, and so got to get up there and hit that fresh powder.
Very nice, man. I couldn't help but notice you're wearing an Austin F1 shirt.
Yeah, so I used to live in Austin, Texas, and I used to go down to COTA pretty frequently, the Circuit of the Americas, and uh, used to go karting there all the time. They've got an awesome karting track, and I actually miss it. I've lived in Utah now for the last probably almost 3 years. I'm about to hit our 3 year mark, and I've been missing Austin quite a bit. So, although I will have, there's a job opportunity I'm looking at, and if it comes together, uh, you know, they are in Austin, so I would be traveling there. I wouldn't have to move there, but I'd be traveling there. So going down there, and maybe I'll get a chance to go drive the karts again. They're really fast. They're these like um, they're gas powered karts. It's an outdoor track, and they say they'll do about 55. I put a little speedometer app on my phone and my watch, and I only ever got it up to 50. So, but that's pretty fast in a cart. It's a ton of fun. I highly recommend it, James. I think you and me should meet up in Austin one of these times. We'll go crazy on barbecue, Tex-Mex, and karting. I think it's a good idea.
Now you're speaking my language. Yeah, man, that sounds awesome. I would love to do that. You said you got snow um, out here, Phoenix. It's been a cool 80 degrees. We got the NASCAR going on this weekend, and it's been pretty busy over by my house.
Yeah, I would imagine that the NASCAR draws a big crowd. Do you guys see like a influx there in the town when NASCAR comes through? Do you guys like is it traffic and insanity? Like waiting in the drive-through lane for Chick-fil-A or whatever.
It is, I live kind of right by down by the track, and Monday morning there were already people lining up down my street with their trailers waiting to get into, just wait for the gates to open so they could go park inside and just stay here the whole week. So it gets pretty nutty. And then I don't know if you know this, but they're here twice a year, every year. So they're here this
Oh, okay.
right now, and they'll come back here for the finals.
Yeah, I admittedly don't know much about NASCAR. It's one of the series that I mean, my main focus is F1. I'm like kind of getting into IndyCar over the last few years. I watched some recaps of the rally races, and then IMSA. Uh, I'll usually watch some of that while I'm like in between F1 races when they're on a break or whatever, and I try to catch up. But NASCAR, for some reason, it hasn't roped me in. My favorite NASCAR thing is probably um, Talladega Nights, The Legend of Ricky Bobby. So,
Absolutely. That's a classic, man.
yeah, shake and bake.
Well, yeah, you mentioned Drive to Survive. I haven't gotten on it yet. It's all they've been coming up in my feed on Instagram, so maybe I need to get on it and start watching it. But
Yeah,
we do have Australia coming up, so I thought maybe we would start with, recapping a little bit about what happened last year at Australia, if that's all right with you. For Australia last year, it wasn't the first race, it was actually the third race, but of course, with Ramadan going on this year, it's been brought back up to the first race, which I always remember Australia being the first race.
yeah, yeah. When I first started watching F1, it definitely was the first race. I don't know how far that goes back, but it was the first race, and I do like that. I did like Australia. I think it's a fun track. It is it was a little more fun, I think, when Daniel Ricciardo was there. So it was like home race to kick it off for Danny Rick. I guess we've got Piastri now, but he is not the personality that that Danny Rick was. I'll say that. He's a great driver, could be better than him overall, but he's not a he doesn't have that goofy personality.
Yeah, right place at the right time, huh? Yeah, Australia last year was a bit of a interesting one, I think. Definitely was one of the better races of last season. Of course, Max started on pole, but he had that infamous brake explosion going into, I believe it was on the fourth lap, where it really took effect. He'd been suffering for a few laps, and then he came into the pits and it exploded against the pit wall, which was wild to see. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, that's a pretty big issue. Giant flames coming out of your brakes. Yeah, that was Max's only DNF for the whole year too. I kind of did a recap of the whole season, and yeah, just one non-finish for Max, and it happened to be in Australia. Apart from that DNF, his Max's worst finish for the year was P6, which happened 4 times. So Australia was the anomaly for our champ.
No, that's crazy. And then, of course, neither Mercedes finished the race. Lewis Hamilton suffering an engine failure on lap 17. He had sort of a rough weekend anyways. He started down in 11th. And then just, a few laps into the race, his car gave up the ghost, and that was kind of it. It was really frustrating, I'm sure, for him. Especially, he's been chasing that 8th title for a while, and then having a retirement is never an easy one to deal with.
Yeah, I mean that definitely, the retirements really take away anyone's chances, for places, and in the top 10, of the drivers' championship. I mean, each one of them hurts. Lewis and Mercedes, I would say, had a substantially better year last year, right? Like that was a pretty big improvement. Lewis won a couple races last year. So that was good for him, because it seemed like a pretty long dry spell for them. I don't expect that Mercedes is gonna have the DNFs this time. I think they're gonna be better this year in Australia. So I'm gonna be watching for that. And the only thing I have to go off there is I feel like they've been steadily on the the increase, especially over last year, with respect to their car being better. So I'm thinking they'll perform better this time. I don't necessarily want to predict. I'm not going to make the bold prediction that they're going to be on the podium this time. Last year, the podium was the 2 McLarens finishing, the 2 Ferraris finishing 1-2, and then Lando had P3, I think, and Piastri P4. So that was kind of like, how the year ended up last year. It seemed like McLaren and Ferrari had the fastest cars. I don't think they've made too many steps backwards. So I'm gonna go ahead and think that they're gonna be somewhere near the top again. And don't count Max out. He might be ticked off from not finishing this race last time, and when he gets ticked off, he comes out, and assuming the car stays together, you can't count Max out for somewhere in those top finishing spots.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Max, I think he's still got the hunger inside of him to push forward and to have great results going into the first race. But just a quick little touch on for the last lap of last year, I think we all remember that Alonso was given a 20-second time penalty for causing an accident with, and I use accident loosely, right? Where Russell crashed into the wall. My feeling on it is it was unfairly given. I know the FIA, he breached Article 33.4 of the sporting regulations, which states a driver cannot drive unnecessarily slow. I don't know if what Alonso did would qualify as being unnecessarily slow. He did lift, but his foot on the brake was less than he had previously put, so it wasn't like a sudden stop. And it's not like he was around a blind corner waiting for Russell to show up. It was, just a gradual lift earlier than he had. And I think Russell made the mistake. They are racing drivers, they're there to race. Was it a little cheeky from Alonso? Sure. But I wouldn't put it against the regulations that he did anything wrong.
Yeah, I feel like driving unnecessarily slow is like, it's got to be obvious. That's, and maybe they thought it was. Maybe when FIA looked at the tape, the tape. How old am I here? Look at the replay. I'm sure it's digitally captured. They probably looked at that. I got to give them the benefit of it out there. But yeah, I mean, you think about unnecessarily slow. So one of the other things, that they talk about is that they'll look at the lap time overall, right? And like, I think that they even have a minimum lap time that you can do. And if you're not doing that, then the race marshal, I can't remember what they call him, race director's instructions, if you're going that slow. I mean, that's really, I guess you could slam the brakes, you could brake check somebody, and it didn't seem like that's what he did. Like you said, just lift and coast or whatever. But I don't know. They've been the FIA has gotten on a lot of people's bad side. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, but I feel like there's been a few mistakes over the past few years. I guess it's probably always been that way, that whenever the FIA gets involved, people are going to debate it. But
yeah, I think the main complaint especially from the drivers, is inconsistency, right? Like, one driver will be penalized 1 week for something, but the same incident will happen later on at a race, but it'll be a different ruling. And so I think the FIA really needs to be more consistent in how they're ruling, in favor of one driver or the other. Because, we as spectators, I like to see good, hard racing, and I feel like the FIA is really inhibiting that. With all the regulations they have, I don't think Alonso should have been penalized. I think they need to, some drivers should be penalized and some should not be. I think they're kind of ruining how the sport is going right now.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you could probably debate it both ways. People want to see racing, but there's so much money involved in F1 that somebody's got to be policing them out there. And I think that's one of the main reasons. The teams want something where there's rules and things so that you're not getting hosed out of, in some cases, many, many millions of dollars because, something unfair happened. And that's one thing that I've always, grappled with auto racing, and is like, there's a real injustice that happens. Like, if you do cause a wreck, that is an expensive thing to happen, for one, but also you could be winning a race or have a chance at a podium, and if somebody causes you to wreck, then it's completely gone. And that's it. You're just out of it completely. That, to me, it's an imbalance. I don't even know how you make up for that. If you're out of the race and another guy only gets a penalty, that doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem like there's any way to really compensate for that unless you DQ the other guy. So that's a thing I've always grappled with. It really is frustrating when you see somebody out there who's battling and their complete race is shot. I don't know how you deal with that. So
yeah, some of the regulations are a little more ridiculous than the others. I don't know if you remember when Vettel had a really good finish at Azerbaijan or Baku, but he didn't have a liter of fuel left in the car, so he got penalized for that. I think it was so ridiculous. Yeah, it was a horrible, horrible thing. And rules are rules, I guess, but it's a little on the ridiculous side, I think.
But that rule you just cited is an exact that's a great example to me of getting out of the spirit of racing. he won. He got P2 in that race. He had to do whatever he had to do to get P2 in that race. And just because there wasn't quite as much fuel in the car, and I guess that's just because they have to sample the fuel and make sure they're not doing something. But is it really a liter of fuel? Like, do you need a liter of fuel to be able to test? Like, that doesn't sound right to me. And it really, like, he put on an amazing performance, and then it was just taken away. And his performance was the embodiment of racing, right? Like, that's what you want to do. You want to see somebody go as fast as they can and get a great result, and it's just all taken away. That was a frustrating one. I remember exactly that race you're talking about.
Yeah, and the F1 cars aren't refueling during the race, so maybe switch it. Maybe have the fuel put in under the FIA supervision at the beginning of the race, and then just have the FIA put a seal tag on it or something.
That's a good idea.
And then that way you don't have to worry about if there's a liter of fuel or not at the end of the race.
Yeah, that was wild. Yeah, that kind of stuff really gets under my skin. I don't like that. There's a lot of judgment calls, and there are times when, the FIA gets a bad rap, and I'm like, well, they got to do something. If somebody's racing unsafely, if somebody's causing another driver to lose time, you got to do something. And sometimes I just think that what happens is that they're so rigid that I don't know how the punishment fits the crime, so to speak. A 3-second penalty, a 5-second penalty, a 10-second penalty. Sometimes you can't really tell what really they caused, and sometimes whatever they did is so minor that to give them a penalty of the magnitude that they give them, like time penalties or whatever, I think it sometimes outweighs what the infraction was. If it was just a racing incident and it's kind of on the cusp of, did they really cause this other person to lose positions or cut so much out of their time? I think they should maybe be a little more flexible. And I don't know if they can do something like that, if they can leave some of it up to the discretion of the FIA director, or the stewards, or if they can somehow, maybe they could even negotiate it with the teams while they're on the team radio or something. I don't know, but yeah, I agree with you. I think sometimes they're getting their nose in the business that they shouldn't be. So anyway,
it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing we can do about it. I think one day they'll be able to, find a happy medium and have a good balance between the FIA and the teams. I mean, when that day is, I couldn't say.
I think some people, and I kind of fall in this camp, think that IndyCar has a little bit better structure, right? Like they let them race a little more, right? Would you say that that's true? I think
I would definitely agree with that. Yeah. IndyCar, well, it's a different beast in IndyCar, right? It's a little more, I don't know, outlaw compared to Formula One. But I love it. There's good hard racing in IndyCar, and all those drivers in IndyCar are fantastic. Some, of course, being former F1 drivers themselves. So the skill is there.
Right.
But I do like the close raceness of the IndyCar compared to the F1.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the money is a little less in the IndyCar. That's kind of why I was speculating that once the money starts to get more and there's so much at stake, the teams want more, steward involvement to make sure that somebody doesn't do something unfair and then it wrecks their chances at money or costs them a bunch of money. And so we'll see. I don't know. Maybe I think IndyCar is kind of on the rise, maybe over the last little while, and maybe it'll get to that same point where it's so much money involved that people are going to be champing at the bit for more regulation. But anyway, yeah, we spent quite a bit of time talking about complaining about the refs.
Yeah, always got to complain about the refs.
That's right.
But going back to Australia, this year is kind of a celebration for Red Bull. This is their 20 years of being an official team. They started in 2005, if you can believe it, which is crazy. And I believe they started also at Australia in 2005. They had David Coulthard and Christian Clean. Christian Clean is an interesting driver. I don't think he ever really fully realized his potential in F1. And then, of course, David Coulthard having a pretty decent career himself, never being a world champion, but always being right there on the cusp of, getting that title. And maybe just a quick little recap. So Red Bull, they started as RBR Cosworth, running a Cosworth engine, and they bought it from Jaguar, who had essentially just run out of money, and Red Bull took over for them. I believe they bought the team for only $1 or €1, which is pretty stinking wild, and they inherited everything that Jaguar had been working on. David Coulthard finished 4th at the opening race in Australia, with Christian Clean finishing 7th in their opening stint. But nothing really came from it. That season was kind of one of the worst seasons, which is understandable as being a first-year team coming in. Of course, Christian Horner being right there from the beginning, he has made a tremendous amount of work to get the team where it is now. Obviously, Red Bull, they're icons right now, and they kind of have been for a while, I guess you could say. They've had their fair share of drama, but for them coming in and starting at the bottom, working their way up, I think they've done a pretty good job. And of course, the news just dropped that Cadillac is coming next year. What do you think is going to happen with Cadillac? Do you think they're going to jump right out of the gates, or do you think that they are going to kind of just be muddling around the middle to start?
Oh man, I don't know Cadillac racing really. I think they participate in some other series, right? I'm
Yeah,
not,
they're in IMSA.
so I'm not super familiar with them. I think there's going to be a hill to climb, because I don't. My gut tells me you don't just come into this sport, which is extraordinarily technical, extremely, there's a lot of science behind it. And while they might have great people working for them, I just think they're going to have some catching up to do from the beginning. Now, having said that, so there's been some teams I think that have jumped in and kind of had some somewhat fast success. I mean, Haas Racing, if I'm remembering right, didn't they jump up to P5 or 6 in their second year in the constructors and have a good year there? And then kind of they've sort of gone backwards. But I mean, the same thing could kind of happen with Cadillac. And of course, it will determine, it'll largely be also what drivers they have, and do they have some folks that can not only do well in the vehicle, but also give them feedback. I think it would be wise for them to have an American driver, because an American team with an American driver, I think that's going to bring a lot of American interest to the sport, and people that didn't get on board with the Drive to Survive wave might come around if there's an American team that is of interest to them. And I think that Cadillac is way more recognizable than Haas. What is Haas? Nobody over in the United States knows Gene Haas or what he's doing.
Right.
I mean, if you are familiar with the sport, then you know that they're an American team. But since I've been watching, they haven't had I don't think they've ever had an American driver, have they?
I don't believe they have. No.
So it's like, they might as well be Swiss or some other country for all a casual fan would know. So
Yeah, you make an interesting point. Do you think they'll hire an American driver? Do you think we'll see an IndyCar driver come over and represent America? Because if I had to put it in for an American driver, I think Colton Herta would probably be a pretty decent candidate. And then for other IndyCar drivers, I'd probably say Alex Palou or Pato Award. I think they've done pretty good. Of course, I believe Pato Award, him being part of Arrow McLaren, I believe he had a test in Mexico with the McLaren F1 team, put in a few laps. So he's been behind the wheel. Do you think that's a possibility that they would do something like that?
I do. I think they need to put somebody good in there, and I think it would be a bonus if it was an American driver. But I think that at least one American driver, I think, would be smart for them getting hitting the ground running. At least try it. Colton Herta is good. I like that idea. Pato, I think I like him better as a driver, and I'm never really sure. Like Pato's like, isn't he like Mexican and American? Like I don't know if so. He probably fit the bill. Maybe bring in that. Yep. Palou obviously wouldn't be the American driver, but he's probably the best of those three drivers in IndyCar as far as I can tell. Um, and so yeah, I don't know, that to me would make sense to get an American driver in there. I don't know, just for branding, marketing purposes, I think it's smart. But then they should pair him up with somebody like the best talent that they could get, because I don't know how those guys would stack up. I mean, they could also get try to get a really good driver from somewhere, and then I don't know, Logan Sargent. They could put Logan Sargent in there, I guess, and I mean he's got the F1 experience. Yeah, I mean the thing about Sargent would be he's driven a lot of races in an F1 car, which I think is valuable, and so while he didn't have the best career in F1, I think maybe he would have some input about certain things that Herta or Palou uh, or Award wouldn't necessarily have. But you know,
Yeah, well, you made a good point about having an experienced driver. So for previous F1 drivers, I mean, there's a slew of them that they could bring, right? There's Daniel Ricciardo, who's had great success. There's also uh, the recently fired Sergio Perez. He's got a ton of great success, and he's a really strong driver. I think he still could be a really good driver. Um, but I think something also to note is that Cadillac is going to be using a Ferrari engine for the start of their season, at least for the first 2 years. Cadillac's supposed to have their own engine by 2028. So do you think that Ferrari are going to play politics going in? Because my thought is they might have Zhou step up and be placed on the team. Him, of course, being a Ferrari reserve driver, or maybe perhaps bumping up one of their Ferrari Academy drivers from F2.
yeah, I suppose that's a real possibility. Joe wouldn't be a bad grab. I think that'd be smart too. Like I think he did well with the equipment that he had, and I think he's a bright guy. So Joe wouldn't be a bad ad for them if they were strong armed into to adding him to the team. So I like what you brought up about Danny Rick. He's got a good. Um, I think Americans like Danny Rick. I mean, I know I did. I do. I thought he was one of the personalities that sort of like immediately stuck out to me when I started getting into this sport. Uh, so I like that idea. Checo has, I think he can bring money. My understanding is that the Mexican money would follow him. I would think maybe Award would similarly, have money behind him, but from Mexico. But I guess I don't know for sure. And but Checo is a proven talent. I think he's had years where he was a decent driver. I almost think he still is a great driver. Just something got him snake bit at Red Bull, and that might not be surprising given that it's an extremely competitive environment over there. So yeah, I like that idea.
No. Well, maybe we could talk about some of our bold predictions going into our first race here in Australia. I am going to predict that there's going to be one of the many rookies. I think they're going to crash. I think the crash is going to come from Kimi Antonelli. That's going to be my bold prediction, and I will also give a bold prediction of who I think is going to be the top five. So I'm going to put fifth place with Charles Leclerc. I think Hamilton will beat him and come in fourth. I think Max will finish third, with Norris taking second and Piastri coming in that first place at the home race. I think that's going to be my bold prediction for coming into Australia.
I like those. The Piastri at P1, I would love to see that. I'm a pretty big fan of Piastri. I think as a young driver, he's been great. And I will tell you this, that over the course of me watching Formula One, which is not an extremely long time, I'll give you that, but I've seen a lot of hype with the commentators about home races, and I feel like most of the time it doesn't result in anything special happening. Now that's a little different. Hamilton won at Silverstone. Was that last year?
I don't remember. I don't remember off the top of my head.
I think he did win at Silverstone, and that's that was a big one. And Max won in the Netherlands fairly recently, I think. But yeah, other than that, it's been like they'll talk big about Danny Rick being in Australia, and then like it never turns into anything. So like, but I would like to see that. I like to see the home race thing mean something, and so I would like to see that P1 for Piastri as well. I like the bold prediction about Lewis outpacing Leclerc, and I don't know. That's a pretty bold one. I don't know that that's going to happen, but it could. And if it does, I would be really excited to see Lewis coming out strong, because I think it sometimes takes a while for these guys to adjust to the cars, and he was in that Mercedes for a long time. So I think in testing he made it seem like he's got a good handle of this Ferrari car, but yeah, I think that would be an interesting one. I think I don't have a bold prediction necessarily, but let's go ahead and say Tsunoda finishes higher than he did last year, which was P7 in Australia. So that would be a pretty big one for Racing Bulls and for Tsunoda. So that's going to be my bold prediction. He finishes higher than he did last year. So P6 or higher. So that's what I'm going to be watching for. I want to see Tsunoda come out swinging too.
Any other bold predictions, or just that's your only bold prediction for the race?
For the race, that's the only one that I've got. Tsunoda finishing high in the standings. But I did have some bold predictions for the season as a whole.
Okay, bring them on.
Since we're going into a brand new season here. So last year, Williams was P9 in the constructors. And I'm predicting, and as I'm looking at who was ahead of them, I predict they jump from P9 all the way up to P6, even though James Vowles has said that this is kind of a throwaway season for them and that what they're really looking forward to is next year. But on the strength of their driver lineup, I say that they make a significant jump in the constructor standings. And then also the folks that were ahead of them, Alpine and Haas being ahead of them. And I think Alpine and Haas driver lineups are going to be a step backwards for them. And so I'm thinking Williams jumps both of those guys at P7 and P8 to go up to P6. So I don't know what you think about that, but that's my prediction, because I think adding Sainz is going to pay off for them.
That's pretty good. I think Sainz has flipped that switch, saying something along the lines, for in his head, I can imagine him going, like, oh, okay, you're kicking me from Ferrari. Well, I'm going to show you what you guys are missing out on, and really doubling down on how good of a driver he is. Of course, coming first in the preseason testing. So I could see that. I think Sainz will outpace Albon for the majority of the season, and I think they'll be right around, that middle mark, like 9, 10, 11 for Sainz, with Albon following closely behind. I don't think he'll really outpace Sainz. For the season, I'll put my constructors as Red Bull finishing third, with Ferrari coming second, and then McLaren coming first. I think McLaren are just going to dominate this season. Absolutely.
I think that's highly likely, and I agree. One of my other bold predictions is that there's going to be a three-way battle for P3 in the constructors, and that's not necessarily of itself a bold prediction. But what I think is the bold part is that I think Aston Martin is going to be in that mix. So Aston, Mercedes, and Red Bull are going to be vying for P3 in the overall Constructors' Championship for the year. My thought there is that the acquisition or the signing of Adrian Newey, the new facilities, and I feel that Alonso is going to carry the team. If that car is better than it was last year, if it's closer to what it was a couple of years ago, Alonso, to me, I don't know if there's a better talent out there on the track. Like he seems like he squeezes a lot out of that car. He's crafty to the extent that sometimes he does things that get him in trouble, like the crash in Australia last year with Russell. But I think that he is sort of their key. Stroll was wildly inconsistent last year, and a recap of everything, but that doesn't mean he's incapable. He ended up with the penalty that Alonso got. Stroll ended up finishing ahead of Alonso, and P6. So I think if Stroll can settle down, and if the car is better, we've seen Stroll do well in a good car. So I'm hoping that the Adrian Newey and the development of their car with their wind tunnel and all that kind of stuff, I'm thinking they make a jump and they're battling for P3, which would be fun to see, I think.
That's a huge bold prediction.
Yeah, hey man,
I'm not that optimistic with them.
You got to bring it with bold predictions, I tell you that.
Well, sounds good. Well, thanks for joining me, Don. Thanks for doing this podcast with me. We're going to wrap things up here. And of course, the race is coming to Australia this upcoming weekend. And next week, we're going to be recapping everything that happened and see how close our bold predictions actually were. So thank you for your time, Don. I'll see you later.
See you, James.